Yo, 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 Forever Convict family, what's going on? I'm gonna go ahead and just get to it, rather than waiting for people to hop into the live. Just for the sake of those who are watching the replays, gotta sit around here awkwardly waiting for me to actually start talking about something of value. You know what I mean? So right now, I'm leaving prison. I just got out of prison, like for real, like not like released as, an inmate of, a sentence. But for those of you who are part of the Forever Convict, community and tribe and family, and follow the podcast, follow the Incarceration podcast, or just my other channel, EI the King. I am a rapper. If you didn't know, I go into prisons throughout the nation for one sole purpose, and that's ultimately, man, to proclaim the gospel of Christ Jesus, to share my story of doing over 12 years in prison and how God transformed my life in the chain gang. We keep it real authentic, man, real raw and uncut, and just relate and share our stories, myself as well as other convicts, about how, change came about. And we're just intentional about going back in and just giving inspiration, hope, and encouragement, and ultimately, to, proclaim the gospel and see, guys receive salvation through faith in Jesus and their life be transformed. So today, I was at a prison and we had a prison event and it was fire, it was lit. But I want to talk about today, obviously, the last live too. I was talking about people who've been sentenced to life, and the reason why it's just been on my heart lately. And that was probably my favorite, definitely my favorite track on my last project of Forever Convict. It's called Life Sentence. So today in today's service in the prison, whenever I perform that song, I ask everybody who's been sentenced to life, to stand up. And there was, I think, maybe about 15 guys who stood up, who were sentenced to life. And then after service, they walked us around throughout the compound. I'm able to walk on the pound and go in dorms, and they let me speak to the dorms briefly and just go in there and hang out with them. I try to eat trays, sit down at the chow hall with them and eat trays and hang out with them if I can. But I went to one dorm in particular, and it was like a lifer dorm. A lot of guys were in there who had life, and I was able to share the song with them as well and encourage them. But man, today, I just wanted to remind those guys, man, sometimes, like I always share, I can't comprehend what it's like to be sentenced to life. I can't even act like I can because that's never happened to me. But I can imagine it's a heavy burden. But one thing we're talking about today, is about not losing hope and realizing that, man, there's a lot of people who overturn life sentences. And actually, one of the most recent videos on the podcast is titled, I believe, Sentenced to Life for Armed Trafficking. It's my dog, Crack. He was actually talking about being sentenced to life and overcoming, you know, overcoming. Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Say yes or no. I don't even know if y'all can hear me. I hope y'all can hear me. If y'all can hear me, say yes in the comments. Yes? All right, bet. All right, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to get back to it. No? You can? No? Y'all can't hear me? All right, hold on one second. Hold on one second. All right, what about now? Can y'all hear me now? Let me know now. Everybody keeps saying no. I don't know if y'all are trolling or not. We gonna take it out like this. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Yes, put the volume up right about now. All right, I took it out the car thing and now I'm talking directly to this. All right, we gonna keep going. He doesn't know how to say no. All right, back to what I was saying. So I was talking about, my dog, the latest, one of the most recent videos I did, my dog Crack, who was sentenced to life and his life sentence being overturned. That's today what we were talking about in the prison, for the men who have been sentenced to life, about not losing hope, because obviously, like I already mentioned, I can't comprehend what it's like to be sentenced to life, but I have a lot of friends who have been. And there's like two sides you can fall on, like giving up and losing hope or still holding on to hope. And man, dog, it's just it's hard to see guys go through the weight of that, what I mean, especially guys who've been riding for 30 years, 25 years and still fighting their cases and just hanging on to the fact that some guys, they're already exhausted all their remedies, so therefore, like, the court of the law says, like, there's no hope. So it only takes a miracle of God for them to be released. But that's what I want to briefly talk about. That, man, God does perform miracles, and guys are released, miraculously, in their cases overturned. But today, man, listen, I went to a prison. That, man, they had like a game room in the dorm. And man, this is crazy. It's cool to see, like, throughout the nation that prison reform is actually taking place. You know what I mean? Prison reform has been all the rave, for the past couple years, especially like in, society and culture. But at this prison, they had like a dorm, and it had like, they had a PlayStation, they had like an Xbox, and boys are playing Madden and 2K. They had like ping pong tables and all that, and that was like unheard of. I only got out 2.5 years ago, but still, like, that wasn't going on when I was in the chain gang. So it's cool to see like prison reform is continuing to go throughout the nation, and not just with games and stuff, but programs and college programs to where there can be, just rehabilitation taking place and things like that. So it's good to see, man, that certain politicians and people within administration see the need for rehabilitation, and that it's catching a wave, because obviously, a lot of times, on prison YouTube channels, I tell crazy stories for sure too, just because it was my experience of being in prison. It's not all like freaking, dandelions, or, it's not sweet, you know what I mean? People are dying. It can be hostile, it can be crazy, extortion, all type of stuff, gang violence, whatever, politics. But also too, man, it's good to see that, there is change. People do, get rehabilitated while incarcerated. And, sometimes, man, administration can really be helpful in that process. You know what I mean? But yeah, dog, it's crazy going back into the prisons. I remember like all the years in prison, walking throughout the compound, especially like when you walk the child, right? For those who've done time before, whenever you're on the pound, you can, you like look out the gate, and obviously all prisons, for the most part, especially in the state of Florida, they're like in the middle of the woods, so while you're on throughout the compound and you're just looking out the gate, or you're in the dorm looking out the window or whatever, like all you see is the woods around you. So you fantasize, like what's out there and things like that. So it's crazy now, after doing all these years in prison, to be able to experience prison on the other side of it. You know what I mean? To be able to go in as a volunteer. And I remember I was talking about this today too in the prison. I remember the first time they gave me a panic button. I don't know if you're familiar with what a panic button is, but in prison, the guards and staff, they wear panic buttons. I think they call it like PBAs. I don't know what that stands for, but it's a little like box that goes on. Swim, welcome home, bro. I see you came home April 1st. Welcome home, Brody. They wear this panic button on their hip, like on their utility belt, where they keep their mace and handcuffs and all that. And it's a little white button, and if they push it, it's like an emergency help. Like all staff, they're trained to immediately run, to go whatever. If it's a fight or a riot that breaks out, or if the officer's hurt or something. But they also give it to volunteers, for their safety. So I remember the first time I went into a prison, I don't think they gave me one, like the first couple of events I went to, like in different states and stuff. But I remember the first time they gave me a panic button, it felt crazy. Like, I kind of felt like I was switching up a little bit. Like, I felt like it was like I was 12 or something. Like I was troll, like I don't even know if I want the panic button, but they make you take it. So it's funny too. I remember whenever I was in the chapel and I was performing and I was, speaking and all that, I was joking about, man, they gave me this panic button. Like I was saying, like at the end of service, I kind of want to go ahead and like, hit the panic button and see how long it takes for them to run, But anyways, it's still crazy to me, being able to go back into the prisons, and especially whenever they like let me walk around and go into the dorms, and number one, of course, I go back in to hang out with them boys and encourage them and share with them what God's done in my life, what he's doing, and God can do the same in their life and more, just to be, an example of hope and inspiration and change, and that they can make it, God got purpose for their life. But it's still crazy going in there, bro, and it's like, just remembering, like, man, like whenever we like go out on the rec yard, like doing years, and on the rec yard working out, and like whenever volunteers hit the pound and they're walking, you don't know who it is, looking and seeing who it is. But now, like, that's me. It's just crazy, man. It's crazy, bro. So it's still surreal for me But I guess the encouragement and application for y'all as well, you know, like we all got different stories. I don't know if you had time before or not, but we all got a story, man. And ultimately the purpose from God in the midst of that is what God, you know, draws us out of and transforms our lives through. You know, God wants to build us up and send us back. You know, so I encourage y'all as well. If you somehow have any ties, if you've done time, you know, jail time, prison time, you know, seek a way to be used by the Lord to give back however you can. But I got a question real quick for the chat, man. How many of y'all have been incarcerated? I know a large portion of the subscribers, you know, as fellow convicts who have been incarcerated and have done time. And one thing I want to start talking about, man, I want to start interviewing guys who've done Fed time, and I want to start talking about like the differences between like state, you know, prison and like federal prisons. I've never done federal time. I've never even been into a federal prison to like, you know, perform or speak or anything. But yeah, that's something that we're going to start talking about as well. Yeah, and I think something else that was brought up today too, we were talking about like being institutionalized and how a lot of times in rehabilitation and prison facilities, it's not common that you see any curriculum or any like programs that bring awareness or help, you know, guys who are about to get out prepare for their release in regards to being institutionalized. And I was having a conversation with somebody today, and one of the examples that I gave is, you know, obviously a personal example that I had for myself, that prison is based upon respect, right? That's like the ultimate law of the land. And this isn't normal and it's not healthy, but it's just true. You know, in prison, you know, if you disrespect somebody, you know, more often than not, the consequence of that is violence, you know, so therefore, like, respect the law of the land. But out here in society, you know, it's not like that. You know, it's pretty much, you know, you do what you want, you know, and people out here, honestly, can be like rude as hell and disrespectful. So I was talking with somebody today, and I was kind of talking about how, like, coming home, I had to get used to, part of being institutionalized, I had to get used to overlooking disrespect and overlooking offense and not feeling like I had to confront it. And an example I was using was like, I was at work release and I was working at a job, and at work release it was like a trade environment, so I was doing like electrical works on yachts and stuff. And you know, everyone's like selling each other out, and while they're like talking trash to each other, they don't mean no harm by doing it, but they're like use like the B word, and they're like selling each other out, like cursing and stuff. And I remember this guy was talking to me, he's talking to me crazy, not like really like disrespecting me, but he just said a few words that I didn't appreciate. And I remember pulling him to the side and kind of like checking him, like, yo, Brody, like, don't even speak to me like that again. And even though, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, it's appropriate to set boundaries, but I began to notice at work at least that I was doing that often with like free world people. And I'm like, why am I being, and like, I remember like seeing their reaction, they're kind of like taken back by it. And I was a humble guy, you know what I mean? I wasn't a Billy Bad guy trying to, you know, I wasn't a, you know, gangster in the chain gang. I was transforming my life in prison. But I was like, realized I was doing a self-evaluation while I was at work at least. I was like, why do I keep getting in confrontation? And I realized that I was a common factor, you know what I mean? I was a problem. And I began to realize it was just because I was institutionalized. You know what I mean? That in prison, you kind of have to, like, you know, operate like that. You kind of got to be assertive. You know, you can't let nobody disrespect you, or they're gonna, you know, interpret you as weak, and then you become shark bait, you know, and then you get preyed upon. So we were talking about that today, about little soft skills like that, you know, that, you know, you really have to figure out on a crash course coming home how not to be institutionalized. And another thing we were talking about too, structure and the routine of prison. When you do so much time for so long, you can kind of get used to the rigid structure of prison. And it actually, you know, throughout the years, it made me super scheduled. Like, if you go to my Apple calendars, like, everything is scheduled. And even to this day, like, I got a set routine about pretty much with everything that I do. I take a lot of morning walks, you know, to pray and spend. Subscribe to the channel, man. Subscribe, like, and share. I'm also a rapper, E.I. the King. Go to my other channel, man, E.I. the King. Y'all tap in. Love y'all. Whole bunch of fire content.